Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, as is no secret, I've now joined IndyCar. I've crossed over to the dark side, as I like to say. And I took this job because I wanted to, and it was offered to me, and it represented a huge challenge, a huge opportunity for me. So I'm more than happy to be here. So we're here to talk about one of the many favorite topics of conversation over the last year or so, the infamous Aero Kits. When we started thinking about Aero Kits, well, when I came on board and got with Will Phillips, who's to my left here, who I'm sure you all know, we started hunkering down on, how do we go forward? Because we had a lot of inputs. We worked a lot with all the manufacturers and talked to the teams, Firestone and Dallara. Will had done a considerable amount before I joined on, so it was coming in and just laying it all out on the table and say, well, what does it mean? How do we do it? What's the best thing for the series? And of course, as has been said, and some of you may say today, that, why screw with Aero Kits? Everything's great. We're racing. Why do it? So hopefully when you see where we ended up, you get an idea why we are doing what we're going to do, which is obviously introduce some modifications to the car over time. So when we started looking at it and say, okay, how is the best to do it? We kept getting drawn into the concept of where is it going to go? It's easy to pass a rule and say, okay, it's Aero Kits next year, knock yourself out. But what does it really mean? Where is it going to go? And given that we've got such a good foundation in the car and the competition right now, you had to look at it and say, well, we need to think about this carefully. And the more and more we thought about it, the more we had to look out long term. So we went as far out as we could imagine. And so far out was, well, what's the lifespan of this car realistically? The main components, what's the lifespan? Or what could we do that would maintain stability of that package? Also, we had to look at the manufacturer's participation, what they were looking for. We listened to the fans, because the fans were a big component of this, and the fans, whether you get it or not, but we do, they want some kind of change. They like what they've got, but they're still crying out for some other things. A lot of people, the good old days, bring it back, and innovation and all those things. So we had a series of objectives, and we looked out as long-term as we can. So when you see this chart that we're going to show you, it covers a lot of different aspects of that puzzle. And what we're trying to do is introduce change, and I'll come back to why we need to introduce change. We need to do it in a fiscally responsible way, because change costs money, as we all know. And we had to do it in a way that we listen to the people who are going to probably spend the most money on this thing, the manufacturers. We have two manufacturers showed high interest in doing Aero Kits and a deeper participation in IndyCar. So we had to listen to them. Didn't have to, we wanted to listen to them because they were a big part of this component. So when we looked at it, we developed this chart, and I'm going to walk you through with it, and I'm sure you'll have lots of questions, or we may have lots of questions. Just if I can ask you to hold that to the end, and then we'll come back to your questions when we're done. So, Will, if you could pull out. So here's the chart. I'll start at the top and work down, just because it's a point of reference. If you look at the top row of numbers, which is the official track record numbers, so in 2012, 2:26 at Indy was the pole position time. And as you go through, you can see increases in speed. Some of those have already been done, and some of them potentially could be targets, depending on how we can reconfigure our car. And depending on which side of the equation you sit, it's our belief that speed does count. Speed is a differential that IndyCar has. They are the fastest cars in the world in the closed circuit competition, if we want them to be. And they have been, and they still have some considerable records. So when you look at that qualifying speed, you're looking at Indianapolis only. You're taking a snapshot in Indianapolis, and you're saying, if speed's a component, what do we do and what's the effect? So these are just calculations. Don't get hung up on the numbers. But as you step through it, we introduced the current car in 2012, as you know. We're halfway through 2013. Now here's where we really started to look at it very carefully and say, what do we need to do? And what we need to do, and what we're going to do, is we needed to look to first safety. If we're going to ramp up the speed, or if we do ramp up the speed, because as we make these changes and as the team get more familiar with the car, and as the engine manufacturers continue to invest lots of money in our series and develop their engines, we're going to go quicker. So we have to say, well, what's out there that we need to really think about? So safety came up on the radar. And one component of this car is the capability of lift. It has a huge flat bottom, and we know it just needs that perfect storm to create lift with these cars. So we said, we've got to address lift. We've got to look at that aspect. Open wheel cars in general, even NASCAR, all suffer for and all had to deal with that. In the good old days, when I started racing, they didn't have flat bottoms like they have now, so it was never an issue. You'd probably roll over before you'd take off. But nowadays, the component of downforce and the larger area underneath the car, we've got a lift component, so we need to deal with that. So we said, well, wait a minute, if we're going to do these aero kits and then we go change the bottom, then what sense does that make? The manufacturers are going to waste all their time and money, and we haven't addressed the safety issue first. So we said, safety's number one. We need to get that floor situation under control. So we said, let's look at it from multiple angles. How do we do it? Do we reduce it? Do we put trapdoors in it? So we haven't got the answer here today, but all I can tell you is we're going to spend, we meaning IndyCar, are going to spend a bit of money researching a floor as soon as we can that reduces the lift potential of this car. Because if we're going to have a speed component, you're going to increase the lift 4 times every mile an hour, whatever the calculation is. Will would tell you that because he's got all the numbers. So we're going to start a development program. We're going to get with Dallara and our manufacturers, engine manufacturers and aerodynamists, and everybody else in our advisory committee. We've got a lot of people that have got a lot of ideas. So we're going to start working on a revised floor. And that's going to be ideally, hopefully done this year in time for the manufacturers to build into their aero kits. So when you take to 2014, there's no changes in aero kits there. But there is a change in engine homologation, which was already planned. So the engines are going to be modified. They're going to be going quicker. And we're going to, as it says on my little box there, is we're going to reduction in race downforce. And what that means is, as we look at the racing, how it goes, we're going to have to continue to do, not just start, but continue to modify that balance of amount of downforce for the avoidance of wide open racing. And also, when you look at that component, we're talking super speedways here, but there is another component. It's about street races. So what we need on a street race isn't necessarily what we need at super speedways. But we're just putting it in that box. That's part of our adjustments that we're going to be making with the minimal cost to the teams. We're not trying to keep moving the goalposts, but don't be anybody surprised if Will isn't doing some juggling with the downforce to improve the show. So then you get into 2015. In 2015, providing our manufacturers still are motivated to stay in our series, and I'll come back to that point in a minute, we're going to introduce these aero configurations. You can call them a kit, you can call them whatever you like, but they're aero changes in the car. So and that change is going to be across road courses and ovals. So it's 100%. You're going to have, hopefully, a Honda version and a Chevrolet version. And if there's some other component, another manufacturer comes along and it all fits and can be done in an organized, managed way, the door's open for others. But we've got to manage it. So aero kits in 2015. So you'll see a significant jump in speed at Indianapolis. And the rules for that are currently being scripted. We had them pretty well 80% done until we finalized this outline. Now we're going to go back and put the rest. So the manufacturers, within a couple of weeks or so, will have the written rules as to how they can compete and what they can and can't do. So then that takes you out to 2016. 2016 just happens to be, of course, as you all well know, the 100th running of the Indianapolis 500. So an important time and a ceremonial event. So when you look at the speed increases and the improvements in the car, you can realistically expect that we will possibly break that record. unless we make major changes to backtrack, we're probably going to crack the record. It's not a must-do. It'd be a nice do, but it's not a must-do. But when you look at these changes in the car configuration and the other components that make these race cars work, it's logical to think we're going to get a rise in speeds. So in that, as the car develops, we're working with our partner Firestone to continue to develop the best tire for our kind of cars, and I think everybody would have to agree to date. We've had super support from them. We've had a lot of great racing, safe racing, and they know how to build a car for 240, 250 miles an hour if you can go that fast. So the capacity's there, but when they see this plan, they got something to work to. We're not sitting there saying maybe. We're going to do this, and so a big partner of that is working with our Firestone colleagues to improve the tire development and adapt the tire to what the car needs to be. In addition, engine power increase. What we say there, as we've done before, for qualifying, in the qualifying situation at Indy or anywhere else for that matter, we have the ability to turn up the boost to give more power if that is needed. So it's just saying there's a potential there. It's not saying a must-do, because at the end of the day, the longer we turn up the boost, the more the engine needs to be rebuilt and the more it costs teams. So it's a fine balance between going crazy and going fast, and then, by the way, your engine bill is already expensive. It's going to be even more expensive. So then you take you out to 17. You can see aero upgrades. It's not like we're suddenly changing the thing all the time. The process of racing and IndyCar racing, like all racing series, is a continual change. Nothing ever stays forever in racing, and nor should it. So we can realistically expect there could be some upgrades in the future in 2017 to continue to grow, because we'll learn what our Aero Kit does and how better to optimize it. So you can expect some changes there. And again, working with our partners, not decisions made in a vacuum. We'll be working with our partners. An engine upgrade, and again, the cycle of homologation. There's probably a chance the engine manufacturers can make a bigger change in their engine configuration in 2017. And here's a new one, team development. We're going to start opening up areas of the car because teams want it, fans want it, and we're going to try and get back to a little bit more of a variation in our competition. So in a controlled way, because all the teams want to see us, monitor the show and make sure there's no, cheating going on or no bending of the rules. So we have to, when we open up open areas, we're losing a lot of control, and in a sense, because we're allowing the teams to do non-Dallara parts or modified Dallara parts. So we need to do that in a way that we can manage and keep the competition fair for everybody. So team development in 2017. You'll see the speeds drop down after 2016. I think that's just a speculation, and it's also a possibility if it's required. I'm not sure that we as IndyCar need to be doing the sound barrier all the time every year. We don't need to break that barrier every time, but I think you will see changes in specification of the car that will influence speed. But the quest to be quick is certainly an objective. And then taking it out to 2018, a very important year, 2018, because the current car, if you look at with Aero Kits, 2018, it's probably the end of its current form in competition, or could be. We're saying it probably is, or is rather, not probably. And the reason we say that is if you look at the current platform of the pieces that we've got, and even with the Aero Kits thrown in there, the basic package has been on the shelf for quite a long time at that point. And there'll be a lot of other ideas coming along, safety ideas, that are, driver cells, all kinds of things that come along that will say we need to do some bigger changes. So at 2018, you're probably looking at the end of an era of this current car. So then we're really faced with a situation, if we were so lucky, going into 2019 by saying, do we go with another new car and get the latest technology, the latest thing, or do we find another way? We're proposing, and we think that's probably what's going to happen because of the economic environment that we're in. We're probably going to extend the life of that car, try to, another 3 or so years. And how we're going to do that is take the basic spine, the chassis, the gearbox, and other key components of the chassis, the rolling chassis, and say, let's not do a kit, let's do a complete facelift, so a complete body styling, which would give you several things. It would build in some more safety. It would build your car for the future to extend that car's life. It would help the teams by not obsoleting everything. And we're working to hopefully better times, more fans, more sponsors coming in, and ultimately being able to afford to look at other variations. But for the time being, we're looking at a lean, mean economy out there, so we're going to try and keep some longevity in our parts. But a complete body kit would give you a different look, a different performance, and it should be, and we'll find out if we can, but it should be about the car of the future. It should be a car, and I've probably heard that word before, but it should be a car that looks like a modern racing car. And when you look at it, you should say, that's an Indy car. You shouldn't be any doubt it's an Indy car. So we can build a complete body, wing package, underfloor, everything. It could look like a completely different car. Whether we run into some safety issues along the way that says, gee, the chassis needs to be different, we need to do a chassis, we'll have to reverse that. But that process to do 2019 is not going to start it's going to be coming around the corner here soon. So we're going to work over a few years to this point. We're going to start with some basic concepts and then start applying ourselves. Again, not in a vacuum, including as many components of our community as we can. So in 2019, we're saying it has to be a major improvement in the car, a different styling, a different performance. And then we come to, of course, and the safety improvements, as I put in my list there. The other one is the engine formula. We will have run this formula right through to 2019. There's nothing says we can't look at other engine formulas along the way, but obviously we haven't said that in this chart. We've not intimated that. So any new formula change in the engines, we're going to get with our current partners and Chevrolet and Honda and say, look, hey, we've got a potential to do this. What do you feel about it? How can we? Because we don't want to alienate anybody, but certainly 2019, I think it's far enough out to say we will look at other technologies or other engine sizes or other whatever. What we're saying here is obviously we want to build a car that's not only fast, not only IndyCar, but we want to build a car that's green. It's got a green element to it, or it's got a variation in the formula that adds more variety, brings more people into the sport and enhances the competition. So we're putting that out there, and why it's very useful to have that is a statement of where we're going to go, is as we talk to other manufacturers and other interested parties, we can say, look, here's our plan. If you want to come in with your technology and different technology to what we're running, 2019, or we can go back to our current partners, and if we can introduce it sensibly sooner, I don't think it's likely, then we can do that. But I can't emphasize all of these sort of changes up until 19 are all a combination of working together. It's not us making decisions in a vacuum. And then 19 through to 21, we've just plotted those years out because I think these old dogs by 2021 will definitely be old dogs, and we will be changing them. So, that's just saying for the economic sake, how do we make this thing last longer? How do we, save money for the teams and build in some longevity? So that's our plan. I think we've got one more chart here to show you, and then I'll take questions. On the right-hand top corner, or my left hand, you've got the speedway configuration. So all the components in red are components that the manufacturers, currently 2 engine manufacturers, can make their own body panels, their own styling, to individualize that car and compete in 2015. There is a note, as you can see the arrows to the wings. If we don't make any changes, currently right now, these wings that we run at the super speedways are getting some weird angles to achieve the lap times we want. We probably, if we didn't change anything else, we'd probably come back and change the wings and make them operate in the traditional way they work and get the balance better for the teams. But if we're changing the floor, there's a good chance that wing configuration might be something different than we're looking at. It may even be the same wings as we're running, the main planes. So we're not saying that these components are automatic. Once we've got some floor data and have a better idea, we'll be telling the manufacturers whether they are a component or not a component of the Aero Kit. We're trying to keep as many things consistent and not just change for change's sake. And then you go to the bottom right corner. That is the road course configuration. So you can take everything you've got there up on the left, with the exception of the wing main plane. You can take all these body panels and you can fit them on your road course car and knock yourself out. And you can add these additional parts which you will need for road courses, for more downforce, for a different application. So that, in simplistic terms, is the plan. There's a lot of work to go with that. Will's already started on a lot of the writing of this thing, and we'll be closing out as soon as we can, and then we'll be looking for the manufacturers to tell us where they are. If one manufacturer of our current group decides that it's not what they want to do and doesn't want to participate, or if the majority of the team says, we don't want it, forget it, we're not coming, we're just not doing it, then either of those situations would say, forget it, we'll take it off the table. So we're not, it is a rule, we're going forward, it is going to happen, but it's with consent of our partners, because without them buying into it, what are we doing? We're just, dreaming up rules that don't go anywhere. So once we get the manufacturers committing to it, we'll announce who's on board, what we're doing, or if there's no Aero Kits, then we'll go back and think about it from a different perspective. Or if the teams overnight somewhere get a hot button and say, boy, this is crazy, let's do away with it, then we'll obviously address it and say, well, okay, let's go try something else. Let's look at it from a different way, and how can we do it a different way. So anyway, it's a bit of a rush through, a lot of words.